All right, so welcome. We're doing a bit of a special today on sales Q&A. So normally it's a sit down, go through questions that you guys have asked me about different parts of the sales world. Maybe some of you are new to sales, and of course some of you asked me questions about closing and your own business and closing if you're maybe on the phone working with someone else, but all that's good stuff. As I've said before, sometimes I like to do something a little bit different. And I was in London yesterday with some sales teams, and I did 7 different lectures on, on many things, from closing and negotiating all the way down actually to the likes of working past gatekeepers and things like that. So it was very much focused on dealing with, you know, the likes of the entry level of beginning sales on the phone and face to face. I'm just going to bring up my computer and just check that I can actually see what's going on here. So what I'd like to do today is focus in a bit more on this idea of urgency. There's so many practical tips I can give in here, but what would be wise, I think, is just to give some kind of broad strokes. So those of you who stay to the end of this Q&A, I've got a special offer, okay, which is more of a kind of a Christmas offer for you. So you must stay to the end if you want to get that offer, okay, and I will be issuing you a special little thing. So there's a little reward for staying. This won't be as long today. Normally we do about an hour or so, but in fact today it will be a little bit shorter than that because I just want to make things really simple. So all this comes from if this is your first time watching it, from about 15 years of experience I've got with teaching sales, working in sales. I originally started at the turn of the century pretty much, selling internet marketing portals to heavy industry, so people who built ships and mining towns and you know, the likes of power stations and things like that, oil and gas and things. So it was quite an interesting world because there are people then who didn't really spend anything on the internet, and certainly didn't think that people would be buying on it. And so we've moved through the years. I've been coaching teams for many years, building them and, you know, getting people to be very prolific in their space. But what I like doing now is I go back into London once a week with different teams and different companies, and I enjoy this process of, you know, helping the brand new sales execs who are like young 20-somethings when I was back then, giving them some feel of what can really work and benefit them. So I'm just going to bring up my screen so I can see you guys as well. And what I want to be doing is focusing on a few things today. So firstly, I'm going to look at what you need to understand about urgency. I'm going to look at how to actually generate it, and then just a couple of tips to finish up. But actually for many, it's crucial to understand what urgency actually is. Okay, so essentially the kind of the vibe that you need to have about urgency is that it's this idea of act now or lose out. And you know, it's interesting, I did a lot of search on this over the years on what other people's take on it is. And yeah, there's going to be variations of it, but my view is in the sales space is this understanding of this principle that makes a big difference. The fact of the matter is that there are different types of urgency, or rather different reasons why urgency will be generated. And we're going to go through, I think it's 5 really good examples of that in a bit. But really, without urgency, or another way of putting it is a need to act. Without that, you're going to be in a position where actually there's never really going to be any deal. And as an example, like a real world example, if you are, you know, if you're in a shop and you see something you might buy, so like a bottle of water, for instance, you're not going to have any urgency or sense that I must act now to buy it unless there's a certain set of things happening. Maybe you're thirsty, all right? Maybe it's an offer you can't refuse so that you end up buying the water even though you're not thirsty because you might have it for later, but that's such a great offer. You see what I mean? So there'll always have to be some kind of impetus. Without any urgency or any reason why you should buy it now, things get left on shelves and purchasing decisions get delayed or put off or not even happening. In, therefore, any sale you ever do, there must always be an element of urgency if you expect to get a deal then and there. Always. Now, urgency is often kind of misaligned with pressure. And pressure is something that can be positive to give someone a good nudge for a good reason, or it can be negative. It can be a massive turn off for people if they feel like you're pressuring for the wrong reasons. Again, we'll look at that in a second. But the understanding needs to be there that urgency can be quite a subtle thing. It can be a welcome thing as well. It doesn't have to be something that makes your prospect feel uncomfortable. So that's worth bearing in mind. Let's have a look at, I'm going to look at things from the flip side first. So if you're taking notes, these are a few things you really need to be aware of. And my Basics of Sales course goes into way more depth on this. But this is obviously just a short webinar today. So the first thing I want you to understand is that you can't generate urgency when 1, 2, or 3 of 3 things are happening, okay? So firstly, 1, if you don't resonate, okay, that's with their need and with them. Oh. So what I mean here is, in terms of resonating, you are aligned, your solution is aligned with what that person needs, right? So for instance, when I was starting sales and I was selling these websites, I could have pitched my mother and shown her how these websites worked, and she would have said, "Oh, that's nice, dear," and she would have listened and been all very polite. She would never have bought it because there was no need for her. She didn't run a shipyard, you know. I know it's a silly example, but the point is there. If there's no actual need, and I'm talking about one that really resonates with them, it's really on their wavelength, maybe based on some pain they currently have or some kind of challenge in the world, that means you're not going to be creating any urgency. In addition, you ideally, we've talked about this in the past, this idea of having a connection with someone, you ideally need yourself to be resonating with them as well. What this means is things like you're on the same wavelength as they are, all right? Things like, you just understand me. You know, whenever they make a point, your prospect makes a point, and you summarize it back to them. So are you saying this, or are you saying that? Their response is something like, exactly, you're dead right, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. So you're really connecting with them, which is a major facet, if not the most important part of building the trust that you need to end up getting yourself a piece of business. So unless there's that resonance on a product level and on a personal level, no urgency is going to make sense, because I can create world-class urgency, but if my prospect doesn't need the product, they'll say, okay, well, I don't need it though, so it doesn't matter if I am going to lose out by not acting now. See? So there has to be a resonation of need, and that's something you need to be building up from the start, especially with them. This idea of connecting is really important. Number 2 is, if you can't generate urgency if you also don't differentiate. Okay? I must write shorter words when I'm doing live things. I spend all day writing things. So don't differentiate. My point here is, if you are the same as other options, and there are 3 different things that they can do, by the way, then there's going to be no reason to select yours, all right? And urgency also doesn't work there. So there are 3 reasons why they might not buy your product. Because the options are these. They could buy you, or buy your product. They could buy, you're probably thinking this one's obvious, buy a competitor. Okay? But there are actually 2 other reasons why someone might not buy from you if you're not different. If you're so weak in your proposition, if it's so lukewarm, if it doesn't really impress them or inspire them that much, they could opt to just spend the money elsewhere. Okay? What that means is, if my potential customer has got $25,000 and they're not really fussed about my product, or they're not really fussed about my competitors' products, because we're both not really hitting the nail on the head that much, they might just spend the money elsewhere. The money gets spent. That's a fact. People will spend their money. But it might be that I'm pitching a CEO of a company, And that $25,000 he was going to put into an incentive for the whole sales team. He was maybe going to spend it on a new fleet of cars for the for the executive team, whatever it might be. It might be that money's earmarked for something else. On the flip side, it might be that when you approach someone, maybe you knock on the door and you meet someone in their house and you're selling them your product. It might be that they had 3,000 quid earmarked for a holiday that they're going to spend and buy maybe in a couple of months' time. But you've given them something so compelling that they would actually rather spend the money on you instead. So that's the flip side. That's what you're going to try and do. But the fourth thing, this is a really bad sign if this happens, although you probably would never find out what they end up doing if they don't buy yours. It's do nothing, okay? So this is what you're actually competing against. And a good example of this is companies who say, look, let's evaluate a marketing proposition, for instance. It may cost a certain amount, say it costs $10,000, and we may feel like we're going to make $11,000, but some companies have a margin before they bother to execute. So they might say, but for $1,000, it's just not worth the hassle. It's just not worth it. So if we invest $10,000, we want to feel fairly sure we're going to be generating $15,000. Any less, it's not kind of worth it. Okay, so just because they might make a bit of a margin, a lot of people will kind of think to themselves, unless your product's going to really make a big difference, maybe I just won't bother. There's a lot of things that all of us could buy, but we could even afford, but we probably just don't bother because they're not going to impact us that much. So it requires a lot more. And that's the resonating side. So you've got to differentiate. If they're like, you know what, I'm not going to spend any money today. What you're doing is you're aligning yourself with, the fact that doing nothing isn't very compelling. So you really need to up your game. That you're up against competitors, sure, but also they might just spend the money on something else. This is important. Be different. Again, like here, okay, you're different. The thing that's unique, sure, it might be the product. It might be great customer service. It might be the fact that, you've got a special way of doing things that's just a little bit more exciting. However, it might be that you're differentiating on you. Maybe your product's just like everyone else's, but they just buy you more. And in fact, there have been many times in the past where instead of buying competitors, I'm told by prospect that they're buying mine, even though I know mine is pretty old product, but it's because they buy me. So remember, the point of differentiation doesn't have to be, this is such an important lesson, doesn't have to be a unique product. It can be a unique personality as well, okay? If I was a guy who did the same kind of, if I did Facebook Lives on the kind of things lots of other people do, then it might be that there's no difference. No one really thinks it's worth tuning into mine rather than someone else's. But I don't know, if I was dressed as a chicken, okay, it's a really ridiculous example, I might be that chicken guy that does Facebook Lives, and then more people are going to pay attention to it. It could be just that my delivery and my personality is the thing that's different, and that can make a huge difference. A good example as well, if you look at mobile phones, you've got Android, maybe Samsung, and the likes of Apple. Really on the ground, there's not so much between the products, so really people buy the vibe or the connection or the personality of the business. Becoming a tribe member of Apple or iPhone as opposed to a tribe member of Samsung or Android, it reflects a different kind of personality, and that's what's in play here as well. So don't discount at all the fact that you should be differentiating on that level as well. If you're no different, they won't feel compelled to buy into your urgency. Okay. Finally, the third thing you can't generate urgency without is if they don't believe you. How do you make people believe? Well, you can be persuasive, but also you really need some data or evidence. I know I get people a lot of times saying, it's really hard to prove to people that I'm going to get them results when I do life coaching or when I'm a personal trainer or something. And I say that's one of the easiest ways to get results. Your evidence doesn't have to be in waist size measurements of your clients, or it could be. It could be something like a testimonial. Seriously, social proof is in play here when you get people saying, do you know what? I have to buy this product because I really believe it works. I can see your testimonials on your site. They're really fantastic. They're all people I'm connected with that suggests that it's something worth doing. So you fire out testimonials, all right, to let people know about it, because that's a great way of showing some evidence. Talk people up, praise when one of your clients does well, share that in the social space, and then people will pick up on it more. Rather than saying, look at me everyone, with your marketing, how about saying, look at my client everyone, look how he's done so well. And within that, of course, you're selling yourself as the person who's helped them get to that point. So if they don't believe your product will work, no matter how much they need it, no matter how different you are, they're just not going to be buying it. And again, it means that the urgency, they're like, so what if I lose out? Because I just don't even believe this thing would work. So these, it sounds strange to do it the wrong way around, but I'm doing the can't generate urgency first, because you need to understand what things you may be missing as reasons why you're not generating urgency correctly. Bottom line is this: unless you have these three things, resonate, differentiate, and data or evidence, then you won't generate urgency effectively. It just won't, they won't be bothered. You know, if they're not that interested, they're not that bought in, then with urgency, they're like, well, yeah, okay, fine, I see your deadline, I see your offer, but just doesn't, I'm not caring that much. It's a simple case if they just don't need the product or don't want the product, okay? So that's crucial, that's absolutely crucial. And with that in mind, you should be looking at how you approach your prospects. Okay, are you doing those things? If you fulfill those three things, you're in a great position, because it means that people are buying into you, they think you're different, but they also believe it works, which is basically getting you into a position where there's not really many reasons why someone shouldn't be doing something. So how do you generate it? How to generate urgency? There are a lot of ways to do it. There are a lot of different techniques people use. And if I'm talking about sales in general, the fact that we have, you know, online sales, we have face-to-face sales, we have phone sales. I know a lot of the people who watch this do telesales. There are different ways of doing it. Fine. So if you want tips on what you do, and I get these all the time sent to me, just send me a message on Facebook, or just PM me or something, or send an email to richard@8stepstartup.com. happily give you some ideas. And again, in the Basics of Sales course I have on 8stepstartup.com, there's a lot more detail on this kind of thing. But I've listed 5 things. Well, I want to list 5 things that are ways in which you can generate urgency. These are just the essentials. And if you're finding 1 or 2 aren't working, you should be trying others. It might be that you know this stuff anyway, but I think it's worth bringing it to the front of your mind and thinking, whenever I'm selling, what am I trying here? And if you're doing, for instance, Facebook ads, there's always value in split testing all 5 approaches. Okay, so these are 5, there are more, I get it, but there's 5 just to take away today. Firstly, this is a classic, limited positions. Exclusivity, okay, exclusivity, or capacity. So what I'm saying here is, look, I genuinely don't have space for more customers. For instance, with my business consulting, I literally only have space for a certain number of clients. That's a fact, because the clients are buying my personal expertise, which I can't outsource to someone else, because that would be their personal expertise. I could coach and train people on some basic stuff, but the bottom line is really they're buying me. So for instance, when I was in London yesterday, most of the money they're paying is to get Richard Moore in their office speaking to their sales teams. So the limited positions is a case of saying, look, I have this much room, this much bandwidth to be able to look after people, and as a result, this is how many seats we have at the table. Or, you know, on a webinar, I can only host 100 people, so it's the first 100 in. Limited positions is as simple as that. It creates exclusivity. It creates this fear of, if I don't do something now, I'm going to miss out. Simple as that. Interestingly, I went to a meeting this morning, and I knew that there would be a big queue. I knew that I would need to get there fairly early, because I wanted to get a good seat so I could see what was going on. So I went a bit earlier, because I knew that if I didn't act early, I would miss out on the limited positions to be able to see what was going on. So it's as simple as that. Limited positions are a big deal, but you must make sure it's believable. And I'll come back to this in a second, okay? Because a lot of, certainly online with webinars and things, a lot of people try and use limited positions where it's obviously not going to work, because to say, for instance, that webinars can't host, you know, hundreds of people, it's ridiculous when it clearly can. So you just got to watch out on that. Sometimes you get pulled up on it and saying, you know, well, I've got this left, when you just think on it, okay? Think about what's realistic and what people are going to buy into, okay? Number two, this is a good way of doing things, I suppose. It's talking about upcoming price increases. Okay, one tip about urgency, okay, this is crucial. One tip about urgency is that you must follow through. You must have follow through. Because otherwise there's that third point on the last sheet that I did, if you like, which is about believing you. So for example, the Basics of Sales course soon will be going up in price, but I do actually need to put it up in price. Otherwise people won't realise or won't really buy into that. And a great example of this working, I suppose, for new customers and not working for existing customers is, I won't say who they are, but there's a number of shirt making companies in London. So they make very smart shirts for work, okay? And these companies compete with one another. I'm thinking of two in particular. And they have offers which are 4 shirts for £100, okay? And what they say is the value is fantastic. You're only paying £25 per shirt when the normal retail price is, you know, £59 per shirt. So you're saving £100 or whatever, even more. Okay, so that's all well and good. And a new customer who stumbles across these chains and these companies, as I did originally, will say, hey, that's a really good deal. I need some shirts. Perfect. Let's buy some. But the thing is, it creates a perceived or a perception of very high value shirt, because these shirts were meant to be £60 rather than, you know, the 25 I paid, and you're telling all your friends, like, you wouldn't believe the deal I got here. Cut to 5 years later, the same exact sale is still running. They don't even have breaks. They literally always run the same sale at all times. You can't buy 4 shirts for 4 times £60. They cost £100. The sale is literally the price. But what they've done is they've said, oh, it costs a lot more. So because there's no follow through, whilst you still go there to buy your shirt, so it kind of doesn't matter, it does mean you look at it and you think, but it's not a £60 shirt, it's a £25 shirt, because it appears to be never the case in their entire history that they've ever sold a shirt for 60 quid. All right, so it's worth thinking about it like that. That sale's always on, okay? With upcoming price increases, it's a really good idea to say, look, at the end of this week, the price will be going up to this amount of money. It's currently this much money. Act now or lose out. Some people won't mind, but there will be some people out there who genuinely feel it, and certain personality types will be like, I can't miss out on this, I have to do it. And that kind of hype is what gets people, with these kind of things, which gets people, you know, queuing outside a video game store at midnight, before the date of launch of a new video game, or maybe camping out in tents 3 days before Apple stores in London, sell their latest iPhone. That kind of thing creates that kind of urgency. But upcoming price increases is a very, very powerful way of saying, if you're going to get it anyway, remember the last thing I showed you with those 3, it has to be resonating, they have to believe it will work, it has to be different as well. With that in play, they're probably going to buy it. So what you're saying is, it's going to be more money. If you're going to buy it, why not just do it now? And the thing is, if that person's probably going to buy it, because this all presupposes, these ideas presupposes that they're pretty sold anyway, in principle. It makes them act now because they can save a bit of money, which is something of value to people, of course. Number 3, and this is kind of the ideal sell, this one, is if you've got pain or need matched perfectly. So what I am actually saying here is, if you identify someone's pain point or real need they have, and you proposition them with your product, you create a thing which I call natural urgency, which is they just need it. They just need it, so they're going to buy it. A great example of this was yesterday at 12:30 in the afternoon. I was really hungry. I needed no urgency. I didn't need to go to a food, I went to have sushi for lunch, but I didn't have to see that, there's not going to be much food left, so I've got to buy it now. I have to, be told there's going to be a price increase or anything like that. I just was hungry. I had the need myself. There was natural urgency. And if you, with your advertising, you with your sales pitch, can really key in to where someone's actual need is, ideally, and this is the thing they really want to have solved, if you can identify those problems and where people really need solutions, not a problem in their life, but the problem they have, if your solution is aligned with that, they will close themselves then and there. And that's how I like to do it, personally. I'm happy to do this kind of stuff in some realms, but this is the ideal sale. This is the case where you just got it right. You just got the solution that they need. You talked about the right facets of your proposition because they are aligned the most with what it is they are really after. That creates the natural urgency. There's nothing in my way. Why would I not buy it now? I'm thirsty. I walk into a shop, they sell bottled water. I don't need anyone saying, if you pick that up now and buy it, I'll give you 10% off. I don't need it. I just pick it up and I buy it myself. So autonomous sale comes through that. Okay, so that's because you match. You should strive in your pitch to be doing this. Whilst you may be using other ways of generating urgency, I'm showing, because otherwise you're crowbarring them in, where in fact this is the pleasant way of doing it. And your prospect, will feel like you are providing them with a service. It's very powerful that way. Okay, number 4. So that's that right then. There's no real emails. Number 4 is this. It's a time-sensitive offer. Okay? Slightly different to a price increase. What you're doing is you're saying it might be a price change at all. It might be that they get extra value. They get access to something else perhaps. Some kind of offer. But the time sensitivity is the case that it's going to go. A great example of this is one of the companies I work with in London. They do digital publications. Well, it means that there's a deadline for people who want to advertise it. Why? Because they have to get the materials in, build the copy, and then put the thing out there. There's got to be a deadline for when they launch it. There's a release date for the publication. So there's naturally a time-sensitive urgency built into it. So it might be, on the 26th of the month, the publication goes out, so on the 20th we need all your materials. As a result, if it's the 18th today, you kind of need to make a decision, because otherwise you'll miss the entire thing. It's kind of, it's the fear of loss is right there, okay? A time-sensitive offer, if you're using it, again, you must follow through. Offer someone something, say when it's going to be no longer an offer, and I'm going to give you one of these at the end of this session on basics of sales, okay? So, finally, this one is a bit more touchy-feely. So, it's fear of loss. With fear of loss, what we're doing now is we're tapping more into the psychology here. What we're saying is, we're not saying so much, we're getting the person to feel or simulate or imagine or visualize or even say out loud and verbalize how it will feel if they don't make use of your product. It's the implication of what it would be like if all of their friends come to your party and then they don't. Okay, they're going to feel like they're missing out, and this is the emotional. Well, they're all kind of emotional, but this is a really big emotional trigger, and people don't like missing out, especially when their peers are doing something. So if you couple this with testimonials, the fact that competitors, peers, friends, whatever, are also involved, it will make people feel like they're missing out on the party, and no one wants to do that. You know, it's probably happened to some of you at times where, you know, if you hear that all your friends have got together and you weren't there, or they're going to get together, and, you know, if you can make this train, you'll be able to get to them, or whatever, then you're going to have this fear of loss. I don't want to miss out. And that's a natural thing, because we're social animals, we want to be in the same kind of place, and you can apply it in business as well. If there's a fear of loss built in, which can happen through these things, sure, there's fear of loss because there's limited positions, because the price is going to increase, you won't be able to afford it, because there's going to be, you know, well, that's not so much the case, but time-sensitive offer, maybe in 2 weeks' time we won't be able to buy the thing. But also emotionally, okay, if there's an emotional fear of loss, then it's very powerful, because emotion drives decisions. Simple, okay? So think on that. These are ways to generate urgency. You can use different ones or a combination of them, but again, it must resonate with me. There must be a difference. There must be something about you that's unique that they really buy into, and they must believe it's going to be effective for any of these to work. Otherwise, they'll be like, nah, whatever. Okay, good for you. Oh well, I miss out, but I just don't care that much. There are loads and loads of offers. Check your spam mail and your junk inbox, or whatever, in your emails. You'll have hundreds of these things. You know, you'll miss out right now. Click on Amazon on the homepage. There'll be offers all the time, and if you don't deal with them right now and buy something, you're going to miss out. But for half of them, it's like, but I don't care. I don't really need them, so it doesn't matter so much. So I hope that makes sense. I want to finish with just 3 tips for generating urgency. In terms of being practical and giving you some things you can really use, this should hopefully help. If you want more depth, please get in touch with me. And also, like I say, the Basics of Sales course covers this kind of stuff in more detail, so you have a real sense of how you can use it, you know, on your sales calls, when you're when you're meeting face-to-face, people face-to-face, and so on, okay? So this is a big, I'm going to use a different colour actually. This first one's a really big deal. Firstly, dropping everything today. Tip number 1. Use a business reason, okay, not personal, okay? So many times I hear sales managers and sales execs trying to close something with urgency using lines like, because I want to get this in today, why don't I make you X offer? And the problem with doing that is, what I'm saying is, make the decision to buy my product, okay, not based on urgency that resonates with you, but based on doing me a favor. And for many, this is a cold call. For many, this is the first point of contact with someone. If you use personal reasons, and I promise you, it happens more than you realize. I've studied and worked with and coached hundreds and hundreds and possibly thousands by now of salespeople over the years. And it's always this thing to start with. They say, what I want to do is this. I want to get this to happen. And it's just a natural way of speaking, I get it, but you need to temper your language and focus more on giving an actual business reason. So create a business reason why something's actually happening. So I'll come back I'll cover this now. So the idea is that you give basically a narrative, okay, or a story. A story is not a lie. By the way, the story doesn't have to be a lie. It's not fictional. It's just the story gives background. It gives a feeling of you know, a backdrop as to why this is happening. There's urgency, but why is there urgency? Don't just say there's an offer. Why is there an offer? Because we've got limited positions, because X is happening. Business reason, not because I want to try and leverage you into this, or because I want to just try and make something, you know, because I want to do something nice for you. People don't buy into it so much. You give a good business reason, it does tend to help quite a bit. If you've built narratives, so a story or a real set of business reasons into why it's come about that person should be buying your product, that can help you a huge amount as well. Think on this, different for every single product that you even have, let alone other people. And again, PM me if you want to do that. 2. Okay, this is crucial too. Be simple. Okay, No desperation. This is a really good point, I think, because what you tend to find is if you have someone who's doing their job consulting and building value into a product and understanding, identifying needs and things like that, and then, you know, we've created a situation where in principle this person feels quite good. If you start turning on the heat, okay, it can make people feel really uncomfortable. There are situations where that is applicable. On occasion, it's clearly the case that some people or personality types, you know, they're just not executors, they're procrastinators. And even if you've nailed all the reasons why they should do something and they've agreed and they see the logic in it and they've got the money and they don't feel that there's any risk at all, some people still won't execute because of fear based on maybe something that's happened in the past or something like that. They're even totally brought into use. It's not like there's a trust issue. But so in those occasions, some people do actually need a bit of a nudge. But in the main, you need to be quite subtle about the urgency. Don't make it the big thing. Have it woven into the fabric of that whole phone call or the whole of that meeting. So it means that urgency, okay, so it starts at the start, right? Which means you don't do your sales pitch, discuss it, try and close them in the sense of showing them what, you know, how it can work and move forward, and then put in urgency. Sure, you make it more apparent at the end, but actually it should be woven into the start, which the way to do it is using this business reason. I'm coming to you because this is happening. Drop in a little kind of a hint of the urgency that's there, and then moving through the call or moving through the meeting, I might hint very lightly to that urgency, okay? Then by the end, it's been built in. It's not like suddenly they're going, oh wow, I didn't realize I had to make a decision today. It's something that's become part of the conversation. And that's a better way of doing it. So subtlety is a big way of doing it. And that's just practice, but it pays to not come across as desperate. Hungry is one thing to help people, but being desperate, like, there's something wrong here. People will lose trust if you come across as desperate. So that directly is affected by the number 3 tip, which is you've got to make sure you're in a position of strength or confidence, right? And for many, so if you're in sales, you know, for a business instance, that equals pipeline. What I am saying here is if I have 10 people, what is it, Wednesday today, if I have 10 people this week who have already signed up for my product, so I've got their money in the bank, they're using it, and I have pipeline of another 20 people this week who I'm looking good at closing as well, if I'm on this one meeting with this one person, how am I going to feel about closing this person, making it into a deal or not making it into a deal, compared to if I had no sales this week, no pipeline, and this is the only person I've got? That leads to this desperation feel. So with pipeline, with options, it creates confidence. You back yourself, you've got more conviction, you almost are more relaxed. You are at your best as a salesperson when you are confident. It's proven. I see it all the time. The person, it happened a while back, there's a guy, a client of mine, he's been there for about a year. He's blank, so no deals for 14 weeks. So I came in and met this guy, and I remember like a week or so later, I walked in the office and he said, I'm back. He hadn't got just one deal, he got 2. He got himself a deal finally, dragged it over the line, and then the next day he got a second one. So a 14-week drought, then 2 in 2 days, and that's just the confidence. And when you look at the detail, he just called that company and closed them like that. It hadn't been some part of his pipeline that was out there for ages because of his confidence. If you're in a position of strength, if you're sitting on £1 million of sales that year, then you're not going to worry about not getting another 2 grand. My point is that getting a sale is always a thrilling thing. It's always a good thing to do. But you're like, well, you know what? If it doesn't happen, it's not going to kill me, okay? And that sounds like it's quite cavalier and every sale counts and things like that. Of course it does, but something in the fact that you're a human being means that if you have great pipeline and a load of sales behind you, you're likely to not be quite as desperate and be a lot more confident. And if you're more confident, you can exercise more risk, which means you'll be more ballsy, or more bold rather, I say, about using urgency in the first place. Some people are a little nervous about using urgency when they're in a position of weakness, when their confidence is low, when they haven't got really anyone interested, maybe they haven't got any sales for a while. What they tend to do is do weak or no urgency, and they definitely don't get a deal. But the whole point is they're thinking, I haven't got any sales so far, I don't want to blow this one, I don't want to rock the boat. And the irony is, the more kind of bold and confident you are with the urgency, the more people will believe and buy into it. So with that in mind, you need to be in a position of strength and confidence. And I can hear you all now saying, but what about if I'm not? Well, if you're not, you need to probably fake it till you make it. That's probably the way to do it. So do what you need to do to get into a position. I'm quite confident right now. You know, I've got a great product. Just speak to yourself. I've got a great product. I've got a great reason to be selling this to this person who's well researched. They really look like a good prospect. There's no reason why they shouldn't be buying it. That can G you up. Or whatever works for you. Is it a motivational video on YouTube? Listen to the right thing on your iPod, whatever. But that will help make you feel better and more confident. That position of strength is very, very valuable. So there are 3 tips just to start you off with. And I promised at the end of this session that I would give an offer to you guys for listening. So thank you very much, all of those who do. And the offer is really simple. The Basics of Sales course, the entire thing, which is my 15 years of experience, all the courses, literally tens of thousands of pounds worth of courses and books and training that I've done with myself, millions and millions of pounds of sales that I've made across the years, and have made even more through teaching, coaching other people as well. All of it distilled into 6 basic lessons to kick you off and understanding how sales works. So that covers things like opening people up, connecting, building rapport. It covers things like identifying the need. It goes through closing, handling objections, all the way through to upselling and looking at mindset and attitude as well. It's such a valuable course. There's literally not one person who's bought it who's come back and said this thing isn't of value. It currently is $147 for lifetime access. The price is going up in the future. I think it'll probably be in a month or so. But the point is that I'm offering it today. If you can do something, I'm offering it today for $47. So you take $100 off the price for the $47. If you can do one thing. And the first thing, or rather 2 things I'm going to call it. The first thing you have to do is you have to message me on Facebook, if you want it, of course, with the 3 things that you have to have in order to close with urgency. So the 3 things I said at the start of the seminar that you have to have in order to close urgency, what were they? If you don't have those 3 things, you can't generate urgency. So you've got to let me know. So if you have to go back through, then do so. And the other thing as well, you have to like this. So if you haven't done it yet and you're watching right now, like this right now. Hammer the like button, okay? If you want to share it, then good as well. But put in a like too. So that's the 2 things you have to do. What are the 3 things you can't generate urgency without? And like it as well. Then if you PM me with that information and you say I want it, then it is lifetime access to all 6, I think it's something like 4.5 hours of content, all 6 lessons as given by me for $47 instead of for $147. So there's a money back guarantee. If you hate it, if it's a disaster, you don't think it's of any value at all, get your money back, no problem at all, okay? So it's literally 0 risk. But for $47, given that companies in London, for instance, employ me and pay many, many, many multiples of what it actually costs per hour to teach this, and given I've proven that it works, maybe it's worth a try, okay? So if that's, with that in mind, give me a message if you want it. So $47, but I think that the essentials of urgency here should hopefully be clear enough. If there are any questions though, Richard at 8 Step Startup, or PM me and I'll happily give you some more information on that as well. But otherwise, thanks so much. Have a great finish to your week. You've got 2 days left. There's loads more to do with sales. Maybe there's more days left if you guys work weekends as well. But in the meantime, I hope that's been of use. And yeah, get in touch. Let me know if you want Basics of Sales course. That is an offer I will extend for a week. So until the next sales Q&A, which will be next Thursday, that'll be episode 22, then that offer is extended to you, so $47. Let me know. I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks very much, and I'll speak to you later.